Chapter 10. Have you been to the Civil Affairs Bureau? When Kira's mobile phone rang, Lewis was slightly taken aback. He turned to look at Keira.
Need iron. Was her?
Keira answered the phone.
Hello?
But Lewis heard no sound in the receiver. He looked at his phone and found out that the line was busy. The voice call didn't get through. He was overthinking it. At that moment, several people in the lobby were on the phone. It was impossible to tell which one was her. Just then, Need Iron sent a message.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Let's reschedule again.
At the rooftop, Keira was answering Samuel's phone call while texting grandson. Samuel gloated.
Boss, are you alright? It's been many years since you last did repair work, right?
Keira said lightly.
If you're free, help me find out Louis' private number, so I don't have to stalk him over and over again.
If she could get his number, she could call him every hour to remind him to check with the Civil Affairs Bureau. With so many phone calls, even if he didn't believe this absurd thing, he would check it out. Samuel immediately complained.
How is it possible to find his private number? Don't you know that there is no information about him online? It took a lot of effort to find out his personal schedule.
That's because you are useless.
Keira hung up and saw Tom showing a contemptuous look.
Miss Olsen, my boss' private phone number is confidential. Ordinary people can't get it.
Keira teased him.
Do you believe that one day, not only will I have your boss's phone number, but also his WhatsApp?
Divorce procedures were a bit troublesome, and she would definitely be in contact more often with Lewis in the future. Tom snickered.
What a daydream.
As soon as Tom finished speaking, Kira's phone rang. Grandson sent a WhatsApp message.
Call me anytime when you're free.
10 minutes later, Keira fixed the air conditioner. She clapped her hands together.
The air conditioner's filter has been used for too long and accumulated dirt, which affected cooling function. It's fine after I replaced it.
Seeing how swiftly and easily she solved the problem, Tom didn't feel so hostile toward her anymore. To avoid her going after Mr. Horton again, Tom personally escorted her downstairs. At the entrance, he said meaningfully,
Miss Olsen, from now on there will be no sign delivery and no electrical appliances will be damaged on the rooftop.
Keira knew what he meant, but she just grinned.
Well, see you at noon.
She turned around and left. Tom was perplexed. He didn't take her words to heart and returned to the rooftop. At noon, Lewis had a lunch meeting. He wasn't fond of socializing, but since he had returned to his home country, he needed to respect Keira's culture of feasting, even though such occasions weren't frequent. Tom accompanied him the entire time. They came to a private restaurant and noticed the waiters and waitresses in uniform. Tom suddenly became more vigilant. Wasn't waitressing the most common part-time job chosen by students who wanted to work while studying? He looked around, observing almost all the waiters and waitresses. Only after not spotting Keira did he breathe a sigh of relief. But he quickly found his own actions laughable. Keira was already a delivery worker and a repair technician. How could she take up another job? How was it that she scared him like this with her simple words?
Well, see you at noon.
Feeling relaxed, Tom entered the private room just as the food was served, and the head chef came to pay respect.
Everyone, are you satisfied with today's meal?
At the sound of the familiar female voice, Tom went stiff. He did a double take as if he had seen a ghost and saw Keira standing at the door with a chef's hat. A soft smile tugged on her lips as she introduced the day's dishes. Finally, she walked over to Lewis and whispered,
Mr. Horton, you should go check the Civil Affairs Bureau.
Lewis was speechless. He clenched his jaw, a hint of consternation crossing his usually calm face. Tom was even more shocked as he stared at her.
You are the chef. You also have a certification for that?
Yep.
Keira reached for her waist pocket to pull out her chef license, but she accidentally dropped 1, 2, 3, a total of 5 different work licenses. Tom swallowed hard.
You've got 5 part-time jobs?
Keira said.
No,
Tom breathed a sigh of relief, only to hear her calmly say,
There are some that I didn't bring with me.
Tom was shocked. Keira, with a smiling face, turned toward Lewis.
Miss Horton, I can do any job. I don't think you would want me to keep bothering you, so why not check with the Civil Affairs Bureau?
Lewis's face remained taut. The woman had amorous eyes and always spoke as if she was flirting. She was attracting the attention of the rest of the people at the dinner table. Lewis's face darkened instantly, still ignoring Keira. He turned to Tom and said,
Go check it out.
Keira rejoiced inwardly. Was this man finally persuaded by her? But then she heard his cold words.
Who leaked my schedule?
Tom took a step forward, again blocking Keira.
Miss Olsen, please leave immediately.
When Keira was once again driven out of the private room, she sighed while standing outside. Why wouldn't this man just believe her? Despite her patience, she was getting a little annoyed at this point. She didn't leave and simply waited outside. When had she ever been treated like this before in recent years? The more she thought, the angrier she became. Keira took out her mobile phone, wanting to find someone to rant about, but found none in her WhatsApp contacts. She composed a post for her story. In the private room, everyone ate their meals while flattering Lewis. He was growing impatient with this, so he took out his mobile phone and pretended to be busy with something. He clicked into his story out of boredom and saw Need Iron posted something 2 minutes ago.
Don't be angry. One should be patient with little brats.
Lewis was slightly taken aback. He immediately texted Need Iron.
How old are you exactly? You sound like you already have a grandson.
He can't let an elderly woman take care of his grandmother. Need Iron replied with a question mark. Need Iron wrote,
Are you talking about my story? I was cursing someone who never understands what I say.
Lewis was speechless. Only then did he realize that he had made a fool of himself. So he sent a message to hide his embarrassment.
The brain is a daily necessity. That person might have taken it as a decoration.
Need Iron said.
I like that. Keep it coming.
Lewis pushed up his lips into an amused smirk.
Only human beings are worth our mockery. Ignore him.
Need Iron said.
Since you're so articulate, I'll give Granny an extra meal tonight. Does she have any dietary restrictions?
Lewis wrote,
The doctor said to eat less sweet and spicy food, but anything else goes.
Need Iron said.
No problem.
Their chat always gave Lewis the feeling of speaking to an old friend. It was very comforting. He suddenly asked,
Can I visit Granny tonight?
Need Iron said.
Of course. You're always welcome.
Afterward, she sent a detailed address, complete with her room number. Chapter 11. Grandson Comes Calling. Lewis took note of the address and replied,
Sure, sorry for disturbing you.
He had to bring a family doctor to check on his grandmother tonight, or else he would be worried. Need Iron didn't reply again. He could tell she didn't like polite formalities. Lewis quietly made note of her little quirk.
Mr. Horton, you are messaging Mrs. Horton?
Someone nearby teased him.
You can't hide the smile on your face.
The corner of Lewis's lips tightened stiffly. He put away his phone and turned to the one who spoke. After Lewis became the CEO of the Horton Group, the mysterious Mrs. Horton made people suspect if she even existed. So he didn't deny it. The person took his silence as admission and flattered him.
Mr. Horton, you really are upright and devoted to Mrs. Horton. You were unmoved even by the attractive chef just now. You're a role model for us all.
With this, others chimed in.
We're very curious about Mrs. Horton. What sort of person could capture Mr. Horton's heart? Old Mrs. Horton must be pleased with her, right?
Everyone knew vaguely that Lewis didn't get on well with the Horton family, except for old Mrs. Horton. Lewis lowered his gaze and simply replied,
Well, yes, Granny quite likes her.
Outside. Bored out of her mind, Keira was waiting when a familiar voice rang out.
Keira,
She turned to face a familiar, handsome face. Jake, wearing a black suit, was known for his gentle and caring demeanor, but now he was looking at her with a stormy expression.
So, you're here.
Keira bit her lip. During her university years, she was always on her own. She was a loner. Jake was outgoing and cheerful and often stayed with her, making him her only friend. But their statuses now made their relationship awkward. She hesitated.
Hey, there's something you need?
Jake sneered coldly.
Island informed me about your background. Why did you keep it from me? I despise mistresses and love children the most. Yet I courted you, an outsider like that, for 4 years. Was it fun?
A pain, like someone clutching her heart tightly, swept over Keira. She had always wondered why Jake, who had promised her a surprise at the graduation ceremony, had proposed to Isla instead. So this was why. His parents weren't in a harmonious relationship, and apparently he had a stepsister who was an illegitimate child. Just by revealing her true identity, Isla was able to shatter 4 years of friendship. Keira took a step back from him, widening the distance between them. However, Jake took a step forward and challenged her.
Don't you have any explanation for me?
An explanation for what? Why was she an illegitimate child? Why did she decide to be born from Poppy's womb? Keira scoffed.
No.
She turned to leave. If their paths diverge, don't force it. If he looked down on her background, she was better off not having him as a friend. Her determined expression irritated Jake. As he watched her walk further from him, a sudden panic seized him, and he grabbed her by the arm.
You can't leave.
Keira looked back at him.
Is there something else?
Jake looked tense. He felt that Kira's distant, cold demeanor was ruthless. His anger flared up, mixed with a strange feeling of resentment. He was the one who let go first. So why did it still feel as though he was the one being abandoned? He mocked her.
You're still working here, which means you're yet to find formal employment. How about working as my assistant? You've done it before.
Keira pulled away from his grasp coldly, rejecting him.
I'm afraid I can't handle that.
Jake, however, insisted.
There's no need for you to do anything. I have an apartment near the company. You only need to live there and take care of my daily needs. I'll pay you $1,000 a month. Is that enough?
Kira's gaze turned frosty, her tone like ice.
So, you want me to become your mistress?
Jake laughed coldly.
You could definitely handle that, considering your mother was a mistress. You've seen it firsthand, so it's in your blood. I trust you to be professional.
Slap. Keira slapped him right across the face.
Jake, enough is enough.
Jake was taken aback by the slap, but he laughed. His gaze turning shaded, he warned her.
Keira, believe it or not, if I don't want you, no one in Oceanian would dare want you. You won't be able to find a job or a husband. You'd only end up as a plaything for others. If that's the case, why not choose me? At least, I might be a little more caring because we are old classmates. I'll give you time to consider. If you change your mind, call me anytime. You have my number.
Leaving these words, Jake walked off. Keira gave a self-deprecating smile. When she turned around, she saw Lewis standing in the doorway of his private room. Lewis didn't like social engagements. Finally finding an excuse, he intended to leave with Tom, but didn't expect to witness the scene in the hallway on his way out. His gaze was perspicuous, revealing no emotion. Tom clicked his tongue sympathetically at Keira.
I was wondering why you didn't find a steady job after graduating from college and continued working multiple part-time jobs. So, is this all because of Jake?
Keira was dumbfounded. Tom sighed again.
You're hounding Mr. Horton because you have no choice, right? After all, there's hardly anyone who dares defy the Horton family in Oceanian.
Kira's amorous eyes narrowed, and she didn't refute his claim. They were getting along after 2 days for the first time. Tom pitifully said,
Boss, Why don't we help her out a little? She seems pitiful.
Keira felt a glimmer of hope. Exactly. Help the pitiful child and go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to complete the divorce procedure. Her company was still waiting to go public. But as soon as she had these thoughts, she heard Lewis say coldly,
Why should I make Jake unhappy for an irrelevant person?
He walked past Keira. She was pitiful? Though the girl looked naive, there was a suppressed cunningness and joy in her eyes. There was no pitifulness at all. She was more offensive than pitiful. Moreover, since she managed to get his personal schedule, it proved that she was quite crafty. The corridor quickly became silent again. Keira stood in place, feeling that Lewis was cold-hearted. Oh well, grandson was right. She should be angry at people, not him. Keira ventured outside the restaurant, slowly making her way back home on her electric bicycle. She had an elderly at home to look after and couldn't stay out for long. She would try to find him again tomorrow. That night, Lewis left work on time and arrived at an old district on the outskirts of the city. He held a bag of fruit in his hand, found the address on WhatsApp, and knocked on the door. The familiar voice of his grandmother soon came from inside.
Coming!
Chapter 12, Old Mrs. Horton. The door to the room was open. Lewis looked at old Mrs. Horton and found her complexion healthy. After that, he took a careful look around. The room was neat and clean, and the small two-bedroom apartment was very cozy. The table was set with 4 dishes of light, nutritious, and well-balanced food, which was suitable for the elderly. The sound of running water came from the bathroom.
Was someone taking a shower?
There was a frosted glass door where a graceful silhouette of a young woman could be faintly seen. Lewis recoiled, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. The family doctor wanted to enter the room but was stopped by him. Lewis steered sideways to block the doctor's view.
Give me the equipment and wait in the car.
The family doctor nodded and left, thoughtfully closing the door. Lewis quickly measured old Mrs. Horton's blood pressure, blood sugar, and heart rate. Perhaps it was because she had had a good sleep the night before. All the readings were incredibly healthy. The old lady said proudly,
My granddaughter-in-law takes really good care of me.
Seeing is believing, and Lewis was at last relieved. His gaze moved to the direction of the bathroom again. Then he quickly collected his equipment.
Since you're alright, I'll leave now.
The old lady was startled.
Aren't you going to have dinner here? The food made by my granddaughter-in-law is delicious.
It's not very appropriate for me to stay.
Lewis put down the medical equipment.
I'll leave it here.
The old lady thought for a while.
Take it. My granddaughter-in-law won't know how to use it. I don't want Dr. Frank to come here. I want you to come to check on me every day.
She thought that if her grandson came over every day, wouldn't that mean he could see his wife every day? After nurturing some feelings between them, they could end their separation status. The old lady believed that she might have the prospect of having a great grandson. Just when Lewis wanted to say something, the sound of running water suddenly stopped in the bathroom. He stood up quickly, grabbed his medical box, and hurriedly left.
I need to go.
Come again tomorrow.
Alright.
The moment he shut the door, Keira, with fully dressed clothes and newly washed hair, came out from the bathroom.
Hey, where's your grandson?
He left, saying it's not very appropriate. He's too reserved and often has a straight face. Granddaughter-in-law, is it because of this that you don't like him? He can change.
I'm not your granddaughter-in-law.
You are.
Keira gave up. Having been living together for a couple of days, she found that old Mrs. Horton was very kind and let her do anything she wanted. But the old lady was particularly stubborn on this matter. She dried her hair and dined with old Mrs. Horton. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Keira lit up the calming incense, and old Mrs. Horton obediently lay down in bed and quickly fell asleep. Keira dutifully sent a video to grandson. The other party quickly replied.
Grandma is very healthy, thanks.
Keira said.
You're welcome.
Grandson said.
How did it go with that little brat today? Do you need help?
Keira understood that he was referring to the matter she posted in her story. She smiled and replied.
That won't be necessary.
Lewis was in the RV when he saw this reply, and his stern face softened a little. This young woman didn't know his identity, but simply agreed to take care of his grandmother, and she did her best. She also didn't take advantage of his gratitude by asking him for help. She wasn't like Keira, who barely knew him, yet she relentlessly pestered and exploited him to intimidate Jake. The difference between the two was clear. Lewis sent a message.
I owe you a favor. Feel free to ask me for help in the future.
Keira didn't take his words to heart. The only help she needed at the moment was a divorce, and only Lewis could give her that. Grandson couldn't help. The following morning, Keira took the old lady to the largest luxury mall in Oceanian to shop for clothes. The old lady's grandson was generous, and she was obviously from a rich family. Keira couldn't let her feel that she was mistreated. As expected, once she entered the shop, the old lady seemed very familiar with it. Old Mrs. Horton loves clothes from a certain brand, and the brand manager would send the latest styles to her each quarter so that she could make her selections in advance. It was the first time that she had shopped in the store, and she found the experience very novel. Not too far away, Isla leaned on Taylor's arms and spoke affectionately.
Dad, you're so busy. You really don't need to take me out shopping.
Taylor smiled indulgently.
Tonight is your first time visiting the Horton family. Gifts to the elders can't be overlooked, especially the old lady.
Isla asked.
The grandma is said to be 87 years old. Why does the Horton family value her so much?
Taylor lowered his voice.
The first branch of the Horton family and Lewis have always been secretly competing for the control of the family. Old Mrs. Horton had 20% of the shares. If you can win her over, your position in the Horton family will be secure.
Isla immediately asked.
Does the old lady have any preferences?
Taylor remembered the old lady he had seen from a distance 2 years ago and said,
She has dementia and is a bit moody, but she adores Hermes clothes. You can try to please her in that regard. Even if you can't get her to like you, never let her dislike you.
Isla nodded immediately. The two of them entered Hermes. Taylor sat on the sofa while Isla began her shopping spree. When she came to the changing room area, she noticed Keira and an old lady. The old lady walked out of the fitting room.
Granddaughter-in-law, what do you think of this?
Granddaughter-in-law? Is this old lady the grandmother of her hooligan husband?
Isla sneered, seeing Keira shaking her head. Old Mrs. Horton tried on another one, but Keira shook her head again. Old Mrs. Horton sighed.
Why don't the clothes look nice?
Disdain flashed on Isla's face. Not nice? It was obvious that they couldn't afford it. She walked over.
Keira, what a coincidence. Is this your husband's grandmother?
Kira's face darkened and she ignored Isla. Isla looked at the old lady again.
Hello, Grandma. Have you never bought clothes from this brand before? Every piece of clothing here is very expensive and requires a certain level of style. It's not suitable for ordinary people.
Old Mrs. Horton was furious and clutched her chest.
Are you saying I'm not stylish? How can you be so impolite?
Keira quickly held old Mrs. Horton's arm, fearing that she might become angry. Isla continued.
Keira, your grandma is more suited for wholesome markets, better value for money. Get lost.
Keira spoke sharply. The commotion here caught Taylor's attention. He walked over.
What's happening?
Isla played the victim.
Dad, Keira and her husband's grandmother were trying on many clothes without buying them. So I made a little suggestion.
Understanding what she meant, Taylor frowned at Keira. Then he recognized the old lady that Keira was supporting and was immediately shocked. Old Mrs. Horton?